In Fallout New Vegas, players can uncover a treasure trove of hidden information that might go unnoticed. With many dark plots, the true identity of Mr. New Vegas, or a network of human traffickers, we're bringing you Fallout New Vegas' biggest mysteries. If the series has taught us anything, it's that you can never be sure that the voice you're hearing is human. New Vegas is no different, as a friend's voice heard on the radio waves throughout the Mojave could actually be something else entirely. One, Mr. New Vegas. If you've ever played Fallout New Vegas, then you know who Mr. New Vegas is. He's none other than the host of Radio New Vegas. Though, unlike the radio hosts in Fallout 4 and 3, there is no physical Mr. New Vegas found in the game. This has prompted many fans to believe that he's an artificial intelligence created by Robert House to control the airwaves of the Mojave, and thus the news available to everyone in the wasteland. This is supported by multiple people involved with the production of Fallout New Vegas, including his voice actor, Wayne Newton. Wayne said in an interview with USA Today that Mr. New Vegas is a voice of a DJ programmed centuries earlier. An official Bethesda blog post was even released that describes him as literally just a voice. If this is true, then how does he gather the information he reports on? Much of what he says could not have been witnessed by a Securitron, but what if Mr. House has a master program designed into the Pip-Boys that are within his signals range, spying and feeding information into Mr. New Vegas's program that it then converts into news reports? After all, Pip-Boys are made by Robco, which Mr. House was the sole founder and owner of. It would make a lot of sense and work in tandem with Securitron reporting to allow Mr. New Vegas to present his audience with the latest news in the Mojave. Mr. New Vegas being an artificial intelligence is never even hinted at in-game, but Chris Avallone, chief creative officer at Obsidian Entertainment, commented on Mr. New Vegas in a livestream back in 2016 that wasn't he just like a tiny AI? Now, that might be a nail in the coffin for this mystery. However, it might not be true at all, as it was never directly stated in the game. But what we do know is that Mr. New Vegas has recently been reintroduced to the setting back around Christmas of 2025 for a special Yule log featuring the Fallout television show's ghoul, Cooper Howard. They jokingly named it the Ghoul Log, and as Coop rests next to a fireplace, he listens to Radio New Vegas, which is still helmed by Mr. New Vegas, despite House being out of the picture. During the broadcast, Mr. New Vegas will tell stories from survivors from all over the wasteland, including one from an Arizona wastelander named Bob. Now we all know that House's signal would not have been able to reach Arizona, as it could barely reach Goodsprings. He even states that his selection of Christmas music has been reduced due to the fires and the rest having been pillaged by bandits. If this is to be believed, as is credible due to so much of New Vegas having been reduced to rubble by the time of the Fallout TV series, that would mean that he would have had physical discs that he played on the radio. No radio stations that we find in the Mojave require this. And if there was a Mr. New Vegas artificial intelligence, why weren't his systems looted by these bandits? All that pristine hardware would have been priceless. Plus, the fires would have rendered his systems without power unless there was a physical person there to repair them. Mr. New Vegas does state at the end that he is technically not alive, but could this mean that he does have a body in order to have been playing records as well as conducting the repairs on his systems? There are so many questions and contradictions now that he has been introduced. So until Mr. New Vegas reports again, we'll have to keep an eye out for his station out there in the Mojave. So what do you think? Is he an AI or a disc jockey who might be a little too obsessed with bringing quality music to the wasteland? If Mr. New Vegas is indeed a machine, he wouldn't be the only program out there that influences the player to be a much better person. Though, instead of providing coverage of all their deeds, this one is more involved in those deeds. But could this companion be hiding a secret past that paired them side by side with a brutal tyrant that seeks only to conquer the Mojave and subjugate its people? 2. Rex is Caesar's dog. Upon entering Freeside, continuing on to the entrance to the New Vegas Strip, it would be hard not to notice the King's School of Impersonation, the residence of none other than the King himself and his gang of Elvis impersonators. Working your way through his questline, you'll eventually obtain a dialogue to ask him about his cyberhound, Rex. Rex is the King's faithful companion and truly his best friend. But did you know that he has a deeper backstory that could go back to the founding of the Legion and the rise of Caesar? One of the greatest hints at this could be the fact that if interacted with, Courier is given the option to inspect what could be a faded bull symbol on the side of Rex's metallic body. This is only enough to prove that Rex had once been Legion property, though if you continue through his companion questline, it will hint at a far more personal relationship with their leader. By the time the Courier meets Rex in 2028, Rex is suffering from neural degeneration as a result of his aging brain, leaving his internal systems incapable of reaching max capacity, something the King himself is desperately trying to resolve, even reaching out to the followers of the Apocalypse for help. Though they're unable to, as they lack the proper training and facilities to fix him, they do know of a former Enclave canine cyber geneticist named Henry and will direct the Courier to him in Jacobstown. town. Despite having been part of the Enclave, Henry is a kind-hearted man who uses the knowledge he gained in the Enclave to better society. Henry agrees to fix him, but first they must acquire a new canine brain to replace his aging one. During the courier's mission to obtain a new brain for Rex, he can travel to Legion's stronghold at the fort, Aegis, where he'll encounter a Legion Houndmaster named Antony. Antony will take notice of Rex and question where the courier got them. If the courier responds, Antony will tell them that cyberhounds are common in Denver, but didn't think that other cities had them as well. He states that he asked because Caesar once had a very similar pet, one that had been lost during a battle. That alone wouldn't be much to point to Rex having been Caesar's former pet. However, Caesar himself will comment that this dog seems familiar. I had a dog like this once. Caesar was so fond of his former hound that he will aid the courier in obtaining a new brain for Rex without questioning further. This is a little out of character for Caesar, as he is one of the most brutal warlords that the Wasteland has ever known. I'm crucifying Wastelanders for even the act of using a stim pack. Antony will even offer the brain of his most beloved hound, Lupa, under the belief that through this, Lupa would gain a form of immortality. Doing this will grant his best ending, which says that with the transplant of Lupa's brain, Rex gained all of the donor's experiences traveling with the Legion. These melded well with his own memories of the Legion, and his new mind quickly adjusted to the myriad memories. With this, we know for sure that Rex was from the Legion, but if he was Caesar's personal dog is a mystery that I, for one, would like to be true. Regardless of Rex's ties to Caesar, he brings out a kind side of the tyrant that even his closest companions have not met. Sometimes, it's better to put down whatever problems we might be dealing with and just help another creature survive. Sometimes, we must acknowledge that others' lives are worth just as much as our own and be willing to be together. 3. Vault 11. Survivor. Could a survivor from Vault 11 have ventured through and guided Wastelanders in rebuilding the communities we see in the Mojave Wasteland? Located just south of the 188 trading post is Vault 11, a vault that houses a horrifying experiment that sought to test human compassion. We all know that the vaults were constructed by Vault Tech to experiment on the populations that would call them home after the Great War, with few vaults truly intending to keep their populations alive. Like most vaults, Vault 11 would be sealed tight following the culmination of the Great War, though, unlike most, down Vault 11 would have no pre-assigned Vault Tech staff to act as their overseer. Instead, shortly after closing, a message would appear on the vault's computers, informing its inhabitants that they would have to elect an overseer that would ultimately be sacrificed, or else the vault's security systems would murder them all. They would have to do this once a year, with political parties forming over time in order to elect leaders that they wanted to die. The most powerful of the groups was the Justice Block, who had become so powerful that its members would use the threat of being elected to overseer and therefore sacrificed. This would finally lead to ruin when the Justice Block threatened Catherine Stone that if she didn't perform sexual favors for their members, they would elect her husband Nathan Stone to overseer, essentially a death sentence. She would follow through with their demands, though they would put up flyers for his candidacy anyways. This broke her, as she had given them everything they wanted, and still they sought to do this. She began to murder members of the Justice Block one by one, causing them to change their target to Catherine. She did this so that she would be elected overseer, and with that power, she issued Overseer Order 745, which dissolved the election process and made the whole thing automated. Not wanting to lose their hold over the population, the Justice Block would stage an armed coup that would lead to the death of most of its inhabitants, leaving only 5 survivors. The last vault dwellers would lay down their arms and proceed to the sacrificial chamber, walks where they would notify the computer that they would no longer conduct yearly sacrifices. This triggered an announcement that congratulated the inhabitants of the vault and referred to them as shining examples of what humanity should be, stating that they are free to leave the vault if they desire, and no one would be killed. They were then left bewildered and horrified when the computer delivered the automated message unveiling the vault's experiment. Afterward, the survivors would find it impossible to live with the actions they had committed, and agreed to commit suicide in order to atone for what they had done to their fellow vault dwellers. All except one, who tried to convince the others that they could leave the vault and use what happened there as a lesson for others to learn from, to present the wasteland with a better way, though the others would disagree. On a holotape found next to the entrance, you can hear the ultimate outcome. You can hear a man asking the others if they're ready, with one saying, "Wait," just before the others pull their triggers. Could he have survived and made his way out into the wasteland, forming some kind of arted group of survivors out there somewhere? We don't know, but what we do know is that there are only 4 skeletons at the entrance chamber, and nearly 200 years passed since that day. With so many communities living in relative peace to the west of the map, could he have influenced their growth and made it all possible? Survivors come in all shapes and sizes, as well as different mentalities. While one survivor may have done all they could to protect themselves and others, another might have simply been psychotic and paranoid, allowing them to overcome whatever threat through the measures they take in their insanity. 4. Novak's survivor. Vital essence. Most of Nipton's buildings had mostly been left intact following the Great War, allowing for a small population to build a living there in relative peace. However, in the months before the courier began his journey, a man named Joseph B. Stein had effectively taken over the town and became its mayor. Before arriving in Nipton, Stein had been a notorious criminal from the hub and sought to exploit the citizens of Nipton so that he could make his way back to the hub with the funds to thrive in its criminal underground. Under his leadership, a brothel would be opened and the town would quickly devolve into a din of scum and villainy, largely attracting the attention of the powder gangers and NCR troopers who would fill Stein's pockets and make him a very wealthy man. Stein would sell out the powder gangers and the NCR to the legions Frumentarius Vulpes and Culta, who offered him an 8,000 cap payout that would never come. Instead, every citizen of the community would be executed in various different horrifying ways, with the one survivor of this massacre being a powder ganger. But could there have been another? This secret survivor could be a mentioned-only character by the name of Harry Collins. Harry is a citizen of Nipton, who is hiding a secret known as his vital essence, which he believes the other citizens of Nipton are trying to take from him. During the Legion's ruthless attack on the people of Nipton, it's believed that Harry Collins barricaded himself in his home to protect his vital essence. He was well prepared for an attack, as his house is rigged with mines, tripwires that trigger all kinds of traps, and even a cage containing multiple scorpions. He was actually successful in staving off the Legion's attack on his house, as there are 2 legionaries dead in his kitchen floor. But what we don't see is a body, and the fact that his traps are still active all around his house indicates that they were placed after the legionaries died. You can't even enter the kitchen without activating multiple traps. What was his vital essence? Well, that was never actually explained, but we can find a note titled Declaration of Vital Essence. It seems mostly like the rambling of a madman, stating his name and that he declares that he is the sole proprietorship of vital essence and claim hereto all legitimate rights in defending said essence versus all comers. He believes that Stein and all the shady crowd that arrived after him are all after his vital essence. So we are led to believe that he ran off after defeating the 2 legionaries and rigging his house with traps to ensure anyone seeking him and his essence would not survive long. Where he went and the true nature behind his vital essence is unknown. What we do know is that his inclusion in the game seems to be a reference to General Jack D. Ripper, a character from the film Dr. Strangelove, who was obsessed with purity of essence and the protection of his precious bodily fluids from a communist plot, willing to enact nuclear war in order to protect it. We don't know for certain if Harry survived or not, but he's far from the only character whose fate is uncertain. 5. Nobark Noonan. Could the Chosen One be living in the Mojave under the guise of a simple hermit living in a shack? Soon after the courier begins his mission to track down the man who shot him, he'll travel through a little town called Novak, a location most notable for its giant dino statue. But what if I told you that within this town is a small character that might be hiding an interesting past? This character is Nobark Noonan, who is considered by the locals as no more than a nonsensical hermit. His house is on the outskirts of the town, and the first time the courier meets him, Nobark will threaten him with a knife. Despite this, he doesn't have a knife at all. I'm just implying that this could be why he's referred to as Nobark, because he's harmless. If asked about his name, he'll instead respond that, "'Cause they know I ain't just barking here. What I say's got bite, 'cause it's the truth." Continuing to speak to Nobark will result in him spouting wild conspiracy theories that mostly relate to local events. The courier can ask him plenty of questions, which he responds to with outlandish claims that simply do not reflect reality. He will tell the player that Radscopians stung him in the skull and the doctors claim that's why he is the way he is. But he himself knows the true ways of things. And if he is to be believed, he'll claim that there are everything from mole men to vampires and communist ghosts lurking in the chapters of the wasteland. Shockingly enough, now, we do actually know that these things exist in the wasteland, with a humanoid species called tunnelers existing just outside the Mojave in the Divide. Could these be the mole men he's speaking of? Or could he have encountered a group of mole miners from Appalachia? There is even a group of settlers in Fallout 3 that claim to be vampires, surviving off the consumption of blood. So, he's not entirely wrong, and many folks believe Nobark to actually be the Chosen One from Fallout 2. To get there, we'll have to make a few assumptions, but there is actually a considerable amount of evidence that might point to the answer of this mystery. First off, Nobark seems to be around the age of 60, which would mean that he would at least have been born around the same time as the Chosen One. The Chosen One was around the age of 20 in Fallout 2, which takes place 40 years before New Vegas, so he'd be around 60 now. Another detail that many fans have pointed to is that if you go to his house, you'll find plenty of Enclave propaganda posters. These would be something that just aren't available in the Mojave, and could have been taken by the Chosen One during his journey to defeat the Enclave, as the average wastelander in the new California Republic probably wouldn't have have lasted long at all, with as many of these as he has on display. Those that believe him to be the chosen one also believe that he acts crazy to make people think he is harmless, as he would have been a very feared man back in his home village of New Arroyo. Coincidentally enough, while playing Fallout 2, the courier can obtain the only working personal vehicle in the Fallout series that isn't airborne. None other than the Highwayman. This car, or a very similar vehicle, can be found at a marked location called the Wrecked Highwayman. If this mystery isn't true, why is the vehicle there in the first place? There's nothing else at the location except it, and a very minuscule amount of junk. This could imply that someone, or the Chosen One themselves, could have come to the Mojave, starting a new life away from violence. To do this, the Chosen One would probably sell his iconic pistol so he could never be associated with violence again, which could be why a unique pistol by the name of That Gun can be found in the Dino Shop in Novac, and it bears a striking similarity to the gun used by the courier. Amongst the many crazy things he says is a threat that if the courier laughs at him, he will use a spell taught to him by a cave rat. And this could be No Bark making sense of memories from his past life, in particular that of a giant mole rat named Brain, who is capable of human speech that the Chosen One encountered on his journey. Now, these could all just be coincidences, with the Highwayman being just a reference to the Highwayman from Fallout 2, but a developer for Fallout Van Buren and Fallout New Vegas, Josh Sawyer, would go on to create a mod for New Vegas that would place the items from the Classic Pack pre-order DLC into the trunk of the Highwayman. This includes an armored Vault 13 jumpsuit, a weathered 10mm pistol, and a Vault 13 canteen, all of which would have been sacred and prized possessions of the Chosen One. If this is indeed true, could the Chosen One have traveled to the Mojave, crashed his vehicle into the pit where it is found? Avosiers got stung by rad scorpions and wandered his way into Novac, where he would be treated and nursed back to health at the cost of his memories fading into snippets that don't quite fit together. If this is true, it could be big. What would happen in the show if a fully recovered Chosen One made an appearance? Though, another theory is that No Bark could be none other than the barking man that was mentioned in the Fallout Bible. This piece of Fallout 2 cut content would have introduced the player to an autistic character that could only speak in barks. The Chosen One would have been tasked with traveling to the EPA building that contained a code phrase that would act as a cure for autism. The barking man would then be cured of his autism and no longer speak in barks, which would explain why he began to call himself No Bark. He then could have just moved to the Mojave afterwards, with the effects of the autism cure rendering his mind a mess over time. The barking man would have also been a similar age to the Chosen One, so the timeline would work for him as well. If this is true, could the Chosen One be another character within the game that players have yet to piece together the evidence for? The Chosen One freed the wasteland from a great threat, an evil that sought to mutate all life into something new, unifying everyone. But what about those evils that go unnoticed, except by their victims that will never be saved? This next one dives into the unsettling and depraved individuals that lurk in the quiet places of the wasteland. 6 Lost Slaves. Southwest of Vault 34, Agent the Courier will come across the Aerotech Office Park, a former office building that has become a shelter for refugees that have lost everything to the Legions with the NCR, though there are plenty of NCR drifters and Mojave vagabonds that have had a difficult time finding work. It's basically a last resort for anyone who doesn't have the caps to buy a pass into the Strip and want to avoid the insecurity of Freeside. Though most folk are seeking to find honest work in New Vegas and make enough money back to move on, they are often exploited by the crooked merchants who exploit the refugees, offering an escape from the harshness of reality by means of chems and gambling. These crooked individuals have no qualms with taking what little these people have to offer, and some have even taken more than that. In charge of this camp is an NCR captain by the name of Parker, who will alert the courier that people have begun to go missing from the camp without any signs of violence that could explain what became of them. None of these missing people seem to have anything in common, sharing no specific age group, background, or even gender. Entire families have gone missing, though the NCR is preoccupied with stamping out the merchants who are exploiting the refugees. The only lead that Captain Parker seems to have is that a lot of them have done business with a couple of scavengers named Dermot and St. James. On the outside, this pair seems to be just a couple of prospectors who made a living scavenging the ruins around Vegas, but as the courier investigates the pair, they'll uncover a much darker secret. The St. James is a disturbed individual, displaying antisocial behavior, which includes social anxieties, an inability to control himself around women, and a messed up fixation with a teddy bear. His favorite prostitute, Sweetie, will even comment that in her dealings with him, he requires her to sit perfectly still and quiet. Though lately, Sweetie has been bothered by the fact that he has begun to place the teddy bear at the corner of the bed to watch them as they conduct their business, describing him as more perverted than her usual clients. His partner Dermot is a much more controlled individual who portrays himself as hardworking and never engages with the prostitutes, but he does have a room in the Casa Madrid apartments where he keeps the records of all his business dealings in a ledger. While investigating this, we'll reveal shocking details about the pair that is hard to stomach. You see, the pair are actually slavers who have been exploiting the refugees and selling them to the fiends, with the teddy bear being the only thing that keeps St. James in check. That's because St. James is a pedophile, something that doesn't particularly bother Dermot, as he sees it as another quality that makes him a great slaver. Having no problem with pedophilia, his only issue is that he doesn't want St. James to spoil the captive children so they can sell them at a higher price, as the friends don't want used goods. Early on in their slaving career, they captured a couple and their daughter. We don't know the disgusting details, but what we do know is that Dermot would give St. James the girl's teddy bear in exchange for him keeping his vile urges at bay. The courier can turn the pair in or just kill them outright and end their sick deeds once and for all, though this doesn't explain what becomes of the slaves after they are sold to the fiends. They appear nowhere in the game, and the only information we have for the fiends even owning slaves is Dermot's ledger. We know that they are paying the pair handsomely in caps, with young girls earning them 50 caps, teen girls 400, teen boys 100, and adult women 200. It is commented that one of the fiends' leaders, Cook, couldn't take their hands off one of the slaves, so they may have performed inhumane acts of evil to their victims before ending their misery in a most painful way. Though we do find plenty of slaves around the territories controlled by the Legion. So could the fiends be acting as a third party that smuggles the slaves to Legion territory, then sells them off there? After all, we do know that the sniper companion Craig Boone had a wife who was kidnapped and sold to the Legion for 1,500 caps. His wife Carla had been pregnant at the time, so the Legion offered an extra 500 caps that would be paid once the fetus matures. 1,500 caps would be a lot more than the fiends had paid for the slaves they acquired, and the fiends are sadistic enough as it is. They enjoy torture and mutilating their victims, so who's to say that they aren't selling these slaves to the Legion and pocketing the extra caps to supply their tribe's severe chem addiction? There is another level to this mystery that's perplexing, and as St. James is also the name of the island operated by the notorious human trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, who trafficked women for decades. His first trial was way back in 2006, but he was allowed to continue his operations until he was finally jailed in 2019. With Fallout New Vegas having been released in 2010, could St. James have been a reference to Epstein's nefarious activities? After all, he was well known enough to have been banned from Xbox Live for his status as an offender. Despite all the cruelty in the world of Fallout, there are still those that hold out hope that better days are to come, often devoting themselves to a task they view as righteous, though so many would ultimately fail, and the fruits of their labor would never be known. 7. Hell's Motel. Hell's Motel is an unmarked location just west of Mesquite Mountain's crater. Before venturing there, you'll want to bring a radiation suit, as the entire place is irradiated beyond belief. Be ready to take down a horde of feral ghouls as well, since it's infested by them. From the outside, it might appear to just be a large shack, but the interior is completely insulated from the intense radiation outside, so you can take off that rad suit. It doesn't take long to find its owner, Dr. Rotson, who is dead on the floor from mysterious causes. That's where you'll start to question what happened here. Immediately, you'll come across the body of its former owner, Dr. Rotson, who died from unknown causes, though whatever killed him resulted in a large puddle of blood beneath him. Everything you find, including the food and bottled waters, are irradiated despite how clean the air is. You'll find a lab upstairs, hinting that Dr. Rotson was up to something. This isn't the only thing that hints at what Dr. Rotson had been doing there, as there is an entire moonshine installation and even a Mr. Handy who may have been responsible for his death, as by 2081, it's gone insane. With details so scarce, this has led many fans to believe that Dr. Rotson has been working to cure feralism, or perhaps even reverse ghoulification as a whole. Fans of this theory believe that the science lab and operating table would have been used to test various different cures, and all the feral ghouls around could have been the test subjects that he would have used to perfect his cure. Hope is a fickle thing, though those who seek a better world will cling to it with all they have, even if they know true pain. Many out there will find comfort in religion, often choosing to spread it to all they can, so that they may create some form of peace in their broken world. The people of New Canaan were such a people, as their deeds had spread their religion far. But with religion often comes rituals, and some of those may hide a dark secret that should never be revealed. 8. Joshua Graham's spell. Throughout the courier's journey to decide the fate of the Battle of Hoover Dam, he'll learn about the former legate and second-in-command of Caesar's legion, Joshua Graham, who had founded the civilization alongside Caesar. Joshua Graham had been tasked with conquering the Hoover Dam and defeating the NCR in the first battle of the Hoover Dam, a task he would be incapable of completing. After suffering mass casualties, he ordered a retreat, a move that Caesar viewed as a sign of weakness, and ordered Joshua Graham to be burned alive and tossed into the Grand Canyon. Joshua Graham would survive this, becoming the bogeyman that would haunt the Legion for the rest rest of its days. Caesar believed that Graham had fled to New Canaan, a Mormon missionary settlement in Utah that Graham had once called home. Caesar would order his scout Ulysses to make contact with the Whitelegs tribe to destroy New Canaan and raze the whole place to the ground in exchange for them being absorbed into the Legion. Without fully understanding what that would entail, which would have been their entire culture being erased and their people shattered, the Whitelegs leader, Salt Upon Wounds, was more than happy to complete this task. As the Whitelegs assembled their whole tribe to carry out the attack, the New Canaanites would take the threat they posed lightly. Little did they know, Ulysses trained the Whitelegs into a ferocious fighting force that studied New Canaan's defense so they could attack with the most advantage possible. Caesar demanded that everyone in New Canaan, including non-combatants, must die, and as such, no one would be spared from the Whitelegs' assault as they waited for when the bulk of their force were away on other duties. Utilizing the cover of night, the Whitelegs would succeed in their attack and butcher every New Canaanite save for 30. After New Canaan was razed, the Whitelegs would then move the corpses of the New Canaanites to neighboring cliffs. Iron salted the ground that they had called home so that no one would ever call it home again. The surviving Mormons who escaped would be joined by Joshua Graham, regroup, and make their way to Zion National Park, where they would be pursued by the Whitelegs. To honor Ulysses, who had been from a tribe that braided their hair into thick dreadlocks, they would do the same to their hair, which disgusted him. He viewed the Whitelegs as a violent tribe that dishonored the memory of his tribe and left them to complete their task without his aid. The courier would eventually make his way to Zion National Park, where he would find himself in the middle of the ongoing conflict. By this point, Joshua Graham had become the guardian of the tribes of Zion, spreading the beliefs of his religion so that he can atone for his sins. He would find a home amongst the Dead Horse tribe, who made him their war chief and helped them prepare their defenses against the Whiteleg assault on Zion. With the courier's aid, they would defeat the Whitelegs, and Salt Upon Wounds would cower and plead for mercy. Joshua Graham, personifying the wrath of the burned man myth that had forged in the wake of his defeat, would confront Salt Upon Wounds and utterly condemn him and his people, proclaiming that Salt Upon Wounds took advantage of us at New Canaan to drive us out. He compared the Whitelegs to dogs. He continued on to say that, now you stand on holy ground, a temple to God's glory on earth, but the only use for an animal in our temple is sacrifice. And finally, Joshua will utter a line that seems to evoke some sort of ancient curse, numbing a spell that no translation exists in Game 4, Kale Wacha Ne Conserva O, stating that Salt Upon Wounds understands him and knows that he is condemned to his fate. From there, even if the courier convinces Joshua to spare Salt Upon Wounds, he would change. Salt Upon Wounds will become a dim shadow of his former self, incapable of preventing his tribe from falling to the enemies they made during the height of their power. What this spell did was doom Salt Upon Wounds, taking everything from him just as he had taken from so many, and for years, the Fallout community would study the language and try to figure what it means. The best translation we have is, the phrase seems to draw from several different languages. Kale could have come from the word Karl, which means king in Old German. Wacha could mean watcher or witness. Dusne could derive from no in Old English. Conserva could derive from the Spanish word for conserve. O could simply be used as an expression or statement. Taking all this into account, many people believe that Joshua's spell translates to mean, as king and witness, none of your people will be spared. With whatever power this evoked, it seems to have rendered that exact fate upon the Whitelegs tribe. None except their king had been spared, just as they had spared none of the New Canaanites. But could this truly be the translation, or could it evoke something much darker? Many fans are still hunting for a more accurate meaning, and only time will tell if this is it. If there really is an entity being evoked in Graham's words, could that explain the next theory? 9-Weapon Binding Ritual. The weapon binding ritual performed by the tribes of the Zion National Park is one of the many mysteries of the Fallout universe that seems to just be simple tribal nonsense, but just like the Fogmother in Fallout 4, it yields results. Weapon Binding Ritual is a consumable item that seems to just be a tribal version of Psycho, though it's made up of unique ingredients that shouldn't provide any benefits. It seems to be more of a performance than anything, as when taken, flavor text will appear on the screen. You have sacrificed a portion of your life's blood to become one with your weapon. Your eyes will be keen, your limbs will not break, and your claws will strike like thunder. Fight only with your hands, or the weapons of your hands, to know this glory in combat. Its ingredients are only healing powder, a knife, a leather belt, amy's, and a tube of wonder glue, which gives the idea that it's more of an action than a chemical stimulant. Going by the text, the user will stab their own hand, wipe their blood on their weapons, tie the belt to slow blood flow, and apply the healing power to treat the wound and wonder glue to close it. Could this ritual simply be a placebo, convincing the mind that something more powerful is at play, or could there be more to it? The ritual has very little drawback, and causes the courier's vision to temporarily blur, something that that couldn't happen to those who don't follow the same beliefs as the tribals. If there wasn't something more to it, how could it have this effect? Perhaps there is a deeper answer that may be waiting for the dots to connect. But those last two theories aren't the only strange tribal beliefs that seem to have a deeper effect upon the world, as there is one more that draws in the darker and more enigmatic side of the Fallout world. 10. The Ghost of She. According to the Saros tribe, long ago a curious child strayed away while her mother wasn't looking and ventured into the caves on the outskirts of the village. Little did she know there was a Yao Guai living there who would devour her. Due to high infant mortality rates, members of the tribe waited to name their offspring, and she was too young to have received a name. The shamans of the village proclaimed that since she had been consumed by the Yao Guai before she had received her name, her soul had been merged with the beast that ate her. The Saro would call this Yaoi Guai, the Ghost of She, and task the courier with consuming a drug made from the sacred Datura root that would grant them the power to put the girl's spirit to rest once and for all. Taking the drug, the courier's vision would be distorted, and they would be guided to where the Yao Guai now resides. Arriving there, they'll find that it is far different than the normal Yao Guai that they have encountered in the past, as it is completely engulfed in flames. It can even copy itself, increasing the difficulty of the fight, though only the main one will have to be defeated. Upon defeat, it will drop its claw, which can be returned to the tribe for a unique Yao Guai gauntlet called She's Embrace. But what exactly happened to the courier? Did he really engage in a psychic battle with a beast that had two souls? Or was the whole fight merely against a normal Yao Guai that seemed different due to psychological effects, as considered a highly toxic part of the Datura plant? It's known for having psychoactive properties, and many Native American tribes used it during their rituals. This seems the more likely of the two, but could this be a coincidence and simply another magical mystery that points to ancient beings having been awakened post-war? What all these mysteries have in common is that they evoke a sense of wonder that leaves you questioning what more could be out there that could explain what exactly happened. With so many mysteries like these hidden away in the Fallout series, eagerly await the next installment so that we may uncover more clues that could lead to these mysteries being solved. This has been Fallout New Vegas' Biggest Mysteries. If you want to see Fallout's biggest ocean mysteries explained in 19 minutes, click the video on the screen.